Mr. Picard is on there in regards to the request for legislation to the community development with Dave Mealy in regards to the sidewalk chapter 521.04.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, it is 6:30. We have members of council present that are anticipated to be here this evening. Megan Starrett and Michael Gregg both will not be with us this evening. We will go ahead and Diane, if you want to do a roll call just for your records.
Okay. Kramer?
Present.
Gregg? Alter?
Here.
Kern Kane?
Here.
Lewis?
Here.
Littman?
Here.
Lombardi?
Here.
Starrett? And Barrett.
Here.
Roll call of 7 present.
All right, thank you.
You want me to do administration as well?
You can if you'd like, yeah, sure.
Okay. Mayor Kathy Catazero Perry? Safety Service Director Barb Sylvester?
Present.
Auditor Jane Ferraro?
I'm here.
Debbie Bonk? Chief Deputy Auditor?
Present.
Justin Richard? Chief Counsel Bill Bartos?
Present.
Chief Engineer David Kroc? Jason Popeil?
Yeah, Jason's here.
Community Development Samantha Walters?
Here.
Economic Development Director Dave Maley?
Here.
Income Tax Budget Director Lori Katagides Boron. Is there anyone out there that I missed? From administration. Yeah, I guess that's it, Ed.
I'm here also.
Comments here.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting with President Eisnick and any updates that you may have.
I have heard that on Wednesday, the Planning Commission is coming back with the church up here on the corner of Hills and Dales in Wales. I believe the meeting is at 4:30. Does anyone have the information on how to log on to that?
Madam President Dave Mealy, I think that should have been sent out to all council members and planning commission members.
Thank you, and it is at 4:30.
Yes, but I want to make clear that it's not to discuss the actual zoning itself. It's just to resubmit the application. So it's more of a procedural.
So no action will be taken.
No action will be taken, only to allow it to come back for a full hearing.
Okay, and also I talked to Mr. Lombardi today, and he said he's been working on getting us back into council chambers as well. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. We're start working our way down the list. Ms. Starrett's not here. She asked me to cover community development for her this evening. We have a legislation request, please prepare an ordinance to amend the sidewalk obstruction, damage, or injury chapter, changing all 5-foot clearance references to 4 foot. Mr. Maley, are you the one that wants to speak to this evening?
Yes, I'll speak briefly. Yes, I will be the one speaking, and I think we'll have John Picard do most of the speaking on it. in essence, what we did, the original ordinance was amended a few months ago when we adopted the language that you have in front of you. And when we did, Sangria Stand put their fence up, we went down and measured that and everything. And when we were looking at it, and I got Mr. Picard involved, and looking at that fence and how that worked with regards to the distance from obstacles, we kind of looked back and really determined that there's a couple different things that go on here, and I guess Mr. Picard can go into more detail, but in essence, we can move that back from 60 inches to 48. Actually, in most sections, we probably could do 36. We didn't feel comfortable with the 36 number just because it made it a little bit tight for when you had two people walking side by side going through. So we decided to amend it to go back to 48 inches. So basically, in the ordinance you have in front of you, all references from 60 inches go back to 48 inches, which is 5 feet to 4 feet. John, would you like to add your comments with regards to this issue? I'm sorry, Mr. Lewis, that you could call on Mr. Picard.
Yes, Mr. Picard, you're free to speak. Yeah, he might be having technical difficulties. I will add at this point that I believe this original ordinance came through Health and Welfare. I know that committee put this together, so I'm thinking that maybe it's more appropriately placed back into their committee to keep it consistent. Mr. Lombardi?
Yes, Mr. Lewis. It was my understanding that the 5-foot language came into play because of ADA compliancy. Has that changed, or were we wrong on that?
Yeah, I believe that we were, I don't know if we were necessarily wrong. I just not sure we were quite up to speed on that. And Mr. Picard and he's our so-called expert with regards to ADA. So he felt very comfortable with regards to moving it from the 60 inches to 48. He thought that was appropriate. He did some research on it to make sure we were covered with regards to ADA. He did extensive research on it.
All right. I will say to follow up with Mr. Lombardi, the research that's been done, I wouldn't mind seeing some of that documentation to see where it says that before we make this move.
And that's fine. I can get that. I wish Mr. Picard could get on the line because he's really the expert on this issue with regards to ADA. Okay, I'm getting a call from him. Let me see if I can find out.
Mr. Lombardi.
Yes, Mr. Lewis, thank you. We, when we put this legislation forward, we said we would.
I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. I think I got Mr. Picard. Are you on the phone now? I merged him. He called me. Are you on the phone, John?
Yes, I am.
Can everybody hear John?
Yes, I can.
Yes, we can, but if we can just hold for one moment, we're here for Mr. Picard. Councilman Lombardi was speaking. Go ahead, Mr. Lombardi.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. We were when we originally put this together, we said that, we would look at making any possible changes that people wanted to make to this, to make it a little bit more, friendly to the businesses with still protecting the sidewalks. If there's documentation to that, I don't think that anybody's going to have a problem with it. But I do, like you, I want to see, the documentation to make sure that we are definitely in compliance with ADA rules.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Maley, Mr. Picard.
John, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, well, I guess I missed the first part of the question, but as far as the clearance being in compliance with Americans with Disabilities Act, the maximum required space for an access aisle in that public setting is 3 feet wide. The proposal here is 4 foot, which is from any obstruction. The only part, other part that is even mentioned in the ADA about an application like this is every 200 feet, there has to be an area for a person in a wheelchair to be able to turn. And after meeting on the sidewalk, we didn't see any issues with that. The whole strip is less than 200 feet and there are intermediate areas. So everything will be in full compliance with ADA as far as having a 4 foot walking aisle.
Thank you. Ms. Ms. Lippman?
Mr. Lewis.
Yes, I'm still here. John Picard's here.
Now we're waiting. It seems like Mrs. Lippman's having a technical issue.
Oh.
While she works on that, Mrs. Halter, do you have any problem with this being brought over to your committee?
I just was feeling the same way Mr. Lombardi was. I didn't quite understand why, after all we went through the beginning of the year, that now we want to change it because of 12 inches. I still don't quite understand that, but if council wishes to do that, I'm fine with it.
Ms. Halter, Dave Maley, I think that really the reason was that ultimately, and I think Mr. Lombardi hit it on the head, is that if we can give the businesses an extra 12 inches, that really, and when you're talking about, an extra foot, it really does help things with regards to their ability to have seating on the sidewalks. And that's really the emphasis here is specifically for the businesses.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Maley.
Okay.
Mr. Maley, this is Nancy Halter. Just seems to me like you've got the curb and then you have sidewalk, and in some cases there's a lot of things like plants and things sitting there. So you've got a clear clearance for people to be able to walk, who cares to walk downtown, to be able to walk on those 3 or 4 feet without problems. Is that correct? Mr. Maley?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that last part of the question, Ms. Halter.
Just wanted to know, it seems to me like you have the curb and then you have this so many inches to walk on. I want to make sure that the walkers that are downtown have sufficient walking space without having to go around plants and things like that. The city has some plants and things planted along there, along the curb.
Yes, and Ms. Halter, and that's why we went, like John had said, we could probably went down to 36 inches, but we went to 48 inches specifically because we wanted to give the ability of people, if they're walking, 2 people walking side by side, they would have plenty of room to walk between the fence and the obstacle.
Okay,
so we feel very comfortable that 48 inches would be appropriate for people to get around downtown.
Okay, Ed, I'm going to go ahead and change this to health and welfare because you're right, the previous ordinances were through your the health and welfare committee.
So with that said, in order to get it on the agenda, Nancy, we would need verbals from your committee.
I'll give my verbal. Mr. Lombardi?
I'll give my verbal.
Okay.
Mr. Hernkane?
Yes, I give my verbal as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Lewis, this is Linda Littman.
I'm glad you could join us again.
I'm having technical. Yeah, I'm having technical difficulties on this side. I'm going in and out of being on a network.
Do you have a question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I've been going in and out. I haven't heard really any conversation that has occurred up to this point, so I'm going to apologize if I'm asking a question that has already been answered. But I guess I'm curious as to whether there is something in place now that is warranting a change in this ordinance in order for us to go from 5 foot to 4 foot versus it just being a random, well, we think now we need lesser room. Is our planters that we have there or the sections that have the plants in on the sidewalk? I guess I'm specifically thinking of like in front of vendors where they're moving out their fencing a little bit in the front. Are we running into an issue where our flower boxes and our fencing areas are shrinking that walking area? Is that why this is coming to fruition, or is it just because we can foresee in the future an issue coming about?
Ms. Lippman, I don't believe it's necessarily either. I think it's just a matter of giving businesses the opportunity to have as much room as possible for seating out on the sidewalk and still make it comfortable and accommodating for people on the streets. At this point, we had originally did 60. And looking at it closer, we thought it would be better to do 48 for that purpose.
Okay, and I would ask one more question if I may. If we have, I guess I'm thinking of vendors again, if we have tables and chairs and so forth that's either inside a fencing or outside of a fencing in any type of common area up by her establishment, or I guess it could be on any of the 4 bump outs that are there, would this still apply?
I'm not sure what you're asking, Ms. Lippman.
Okay, so if you're looking at vendors and you know where each of our bump outs are from our streetscape, and you referred to them as bump outs, if that was considered any type of common area where tables and chairs could be put, this 4 foot would allow for us to, I guess I'm asking, will it apply to that area? But it will will it also allow us to put some additional seating there if it was decided to do so?
Well, I think this basically any fencing ordinance would be required to be 4 foot from any obstacle, no matter where you're at along the sidewalks. Whether you're in the bump house or whatever area, it's 4 foot from any obstacle, whether that's the planters, whether that's the light post, whatever's on the sidewalks. So as long as you're 4 foot from that, you can put a fence up.
Well, there are a lot of establishments that have seating out front, but have not put an actual permanent fencing in yet. Is this part of the reason in doing this now, so that if there are other establishments that put in the permanent fencing, that it'll give them a little bit more room in that seating area?
Yes, absolutely. That is absolutely true.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lewis, Dave Maley again. John, if you're still on the phone, if you could get something in writing with regards, I think you might have already provided me some stuff, but something I could give the council before next week's meeting.
Sure, no problem. I already have it, and I did send it to you, but I can resend it. Not a problem.
Okay, I want to make sure I got it. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, Mrs. Halder, would you want any more discussion on this, or are we okay to move forward?
Mr. Lewis, if anybody else has any questions or discussion?
Mr. Therick's raising his hand.
Mr. Therick?
Thank you, Mr. Halder and Mr. Lewis. I have had quite a bit of conversations with the folks down there in the business district, and wanted to get this straightened out. The planters do impede a lot of walkways down there, and to go in 5 foot from some of those, you can't even have a 4-top table there, and you get around it. So that, they were hoping that we could give them that at least enough room to get around the table once they have it out there. Because their businesses now can only survive pretty much if they have some seating outside. They can't get very many people inside. So I hope this does get heard next week and get on with it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Lombardi?
Thank you, Mrs. Halder. I believe the ordinance was written that if you're going to have tables and chairs outside, they had to be within a fenced area. You only have 36 inches from the front wall of your business to put anything like a bench or anything like that. But if it was a seating area such as tables and chairs, it has to be within a fenced area.
Ms. Halter,
Mr. Lewis?
this isn't necessarily this, but I would appreciate it if Mr. Maley or the administration could take some time, and maybe other council members don't agree, but I would like to see the other side of, what is that, Postal or Diamond? I can't ever remember. The other side, the same side that Bender's is on, if we could put those same blocks on there that would stop the traffic, or look into that at least, and maybe set up some tables out there, and it'd be more of a community seating area where someone from like a Smiley's or a Root or something like that would want to go over there and sit. That would be great.
Mr. Lewis, yeah, we could look into that. The only the only downside is you couldn't have alcohol there. It'd just be for like food or just coffee or whatever.
As of yet, looking into Adora is certainly allowing that to be the case down the road. So those types of common areas would definitely be, the city would have to maintain those, because I know I've had the same types of conversations with business owners down there, and they really, would like to see that done, but they don't want to go to the expense of putting tables and chairs there. They think it's, owned by the city. So the city should have common areas, whether it's on the balance, as Vendors has asked to go further down on her front side. But other areas within the city, one of which Mr. Lewis just mentioned, but there are others where, if they're kind of a dead end type thing, it's able to be turned into some type of common area that, as we look at Adora down the road, it would allow for, a patron to have an alcoholic beverage as well as a dinner from Smiley's, and enjoy both. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interject, but I thought that was very timely.
Yeah, it's just a thought. I mean, it would be a quick stop now, and then as we go down the road, we could look at actually doing maybe some beautification in those areas to make it even more attractive. But to give some immediate relief, we could do some temporary measures. Ms. Halter, I see Mr. Theriot's wanting to say something again.
Yes, Mr. Theriot?
Yeah, I had also, thank you very much, both of you. I had several conversations with the folks down there. And as I recall, none of the businesses that serve food and alcoholic beverages are contiguous with that street. So there's space in between. So their fencing couldn't go past their establishment to include that area. So it's kind of a moot point for them. So it would be nice in the long run. And if this Dora concept went through, I suppose that would be good then. But yeah, I know we've talked about this before, and I thought it was a good idea too. But when they pointed out that they wouldn't be able to use it, we'll have to see how things pan out, I guess. Thank you.
I have a question again. Perhaps Mrs. Lippman or Mr. Theriot could answer this, since you're downtown a lot, apparently. Exactly how many bars do we have downtown that how many are down there? We're talking about all this about bringing drinks out and that, but actually, is there only 2 or 3?
Well, there's actually 17.
17 downtown?
Yes. Now, that doesn't mean on Lincoln Way, but it does mean either bars or restaurants that serve alcohol.
immediate downtown that we're speaking about right now.
Well, I'm not talking just on Lincoln Way. You're asking
Well-
in downtown Massillon, so I'm going all the way
Well,
up to.
I know, Mrs. Whitman, but I'm asking you, we're discussing the block of Lincoln Way from, it appears, from Erie up to First Street, basically. So how many bars are we, you don't see, I don't see any tables and chairs anywhere else in town.
A common area would not preclude any of the restaurants from allowing a to-go order to be purchased and then walking to a common area. So if you're looking at, bars within a 1 block area, yes, you have 3 and a restaurant that's going to be, 1 block down further. So if you're looking only at that little spot, I guess my vision in that common area is not just to be used by that particular block's businesses. I would think that you could have, for example, even the Root that does not serve alcohol, she basically has 2 seats in front of her establishment, but 1 door down, there's an entire street or part of an alleyway that could be part of a common area where her patrons can take that to-go order and be able to enjoy it in a common space. So I guess I'm not, I guess I'm not looking at this as just a couple business to be advantageous to a couple businesses. It would be the downtown and as a whole.
Thank you, Mrs. Lippman. I think we're finished, Mr. Lewis.
All right, community development doesn't have anything else. Environmental,
This week.
health and welfare. Do you have anything else, Mrs. Alter?
No, Mr. Lewis, thank you.
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec does not have anything.
Police and Fire.
I do not have anything for police and fire, but I would ask that we allow the Safety Service Director to give us a brief update of our 23rd Street intersection. She'd had an additional meeting regarding funding, and I thought we should just get an update on that after finance, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We could also do it during streets and highways if Mr. Thayer would want to. I mean, seems appropriate there as well. Public
Okay,
utility.
thank you.
Public utilities has nothing.
And rules and courts. Mr. Gregg's not in. I'll just take this opportunity. I know at the last meeting, we did have a brief discussion on abstentions and how the rule reads for council and how we should handle those. I felt that maybe council would want to discuss that tonight, but it seems like it would fit under rules and courts most appropriately. And with 2/3 of that committee not being present tonight, I was just thinking maybe it'd be most appropriate to just wait until next work session and let that committee bring that up for discussion. If everyone is in agreement with that, go ahead. I just want to make sure they have their insight on it. So I'll relay that to Mr. Gregg and he can bring it up in 2 weeks when we have our next work session.
I'm sorry, I could not hear what you were saying.
Ms. Lippman, it was just about the questions about abstentions and how to handle them with council.
Oh,
I just said it probably fits in that committee, and we'll just wait till the next work session when that committee is present.
Okay, thank you.
Streets and highways.
Yes, we do have one piece of legislation here. It's asking us to prepare legislation necessary to authorize the purchase and appropriation of property required for the Wales Road Improvement Project. And I understand Mr. Popeil is here with us to give us some insight on a little more details because there's nothing else on it.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is related to the acquisition for the Wales Road safety improvement. The law department is working on this, and I think Mr. Bartos is on the line to help explain this in a little bit more detail. Mr. Bartos?
Please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes. Please.
Okay, great. Yes, so the process that we're going through for Wales Road is the typical process when the city goes through a road project and there's a need for whether it be temporary right of way, whether we're doing work along the road and we need to temporarily work on somebody's property, or if we have a permanent right of way acquisition that we need to make along the roadway. And so with that comes the acquisition of, temporary or permanent right-of-way and various different acquisitions that come with that. So I believe the money's already been appropriated. I think or Engineer Popeil can speak to that. But for the legislation piece, you see any and all legislation. And the reason that it's worded like that is because council is the authority that controls the purchase and sale of real estate for the city. And so right now, as I understand it, from talking to the engineering department, there's the vast majority of these parcels, I think there's going to be an agreement on without having to go through the appropriation process or what's known as the eminent domain process. So with those parcels, we'll probably see an ordinance that simply encompasses all those parcels that have an agreement or will have an agreement without going through the appropriation or eminent domain process. And it will just be council's approval or ratification of those purchases and establishment of the fair market value of those purchases. And that process has been undertaken by the engineering department with the help of, I believe, a third-party engineering firm that has gone out and surveyed all the properties, determined the fair market values, et cetera. For those properties where we have, the city engages in negotiations and we offer the fair market value and we just can't come to terms with the owner, then we do go to the next process, which is the eminent domain process, and then that would involve a resolution for the intent to appropriate the property. And talking with Gary Fry in our office, we're thinking that we'll probably do individual resolutions for those individual properties. We're thinking that there might be 12 to 16 at this point right now we're looking at. But it'll be easier, we think, to do individual resolutions for those single eminent domain actions than doing one and then having to include that one resolution with each petition or complaint, if you will, that will eventually be filed with the Court of Common Pleas. So this will actually encompass, as I said, it says any and all legislation. It'll encompass multiple pieces of legislation for this very, ever-changing and evolving process of right-of-way acquisition. But I think that covers the legal aspects, and I'm sure Mr. Popeil might have more to add on the project and engineering aspects. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
I have one right off the bat. I know several people who live along there, 40 plus years of residence. It's most of the properties are, well, most of the houses are almost on the street there. How are you going to widen that?
Jim, there's in some areas where we're widening it, we're not the only permanent take is going to be near Lake Road. All the houses, I know they seem close to the road, but we're not going to be infringing at all. The sidewalk's going to stay the same width. It may move back a little bit, but there's no issue in the plans where there's fear of a house being too close to the road. I know it looks like it, but it's actually pretty good. Most of the right-of-way takes that we're doing are temporary, 95% of them. And that just means they might have to store some equipment or walk along their property while we're pouring the sidewalk, and that's the only reason why we have temporary take.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Slipman?
Yes, thank you, Councilman Barrett. My question would be, Mr. Bartos indicated funds had been already allocated. Can he refresh our memory on how much we've allocated for the purchase of these properties? I think I'm remembering 300 some thousand, but I wasn't sure if my memory is serving me correct or not.
I don't know, Barb, if you have that number off the top of your head. I thought it was, was 175,000 with a 10%, with 90% of it being returned. But I'd have to open up the fact sheet, and I think all you guys should have an updated fact sheet that I gave to Diane to send to you a little bit ago. This question was asked on how the funding was allocated in terms of engineering, right-of-way, construction, and it should be on there. But I will double check. Yes. And go ahead.
I can answer for you. Yes, Jason did send out that entire breakdown to all of you on July the 15th after the question was asked. But I can tell you he is correct in the amount. The amount that council did appropriate was $175,000. That is for the this purpose for the basically the acquisitions, the appropriations, the money that was put in there, and it was through ordinance number 57-2020. And again, that is correct. It was $175,000 that was put into there for this purpose. And AECom is the engineering consultant that's working on the city with this project for that portion.
Barb, are you referring to the project fact sheet that says updated September 24th, 2019?
Yes.
And you say it says 175,000 somewhere on here?
Well, that gives you the whole breakdown of where the funding is coming from. That's what Jason was referring to. 175,000 is off of ordinance number 57-2020. Then that's the portion that is out there to use for the acquisition payments that we're referring to now.
Okay, thank you.
That Attorney Bartos was referring to, yes.
Mr. Thayer, Ms. Creamer has a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Creamer.
Thank you. Can somebody tell us what that range of that fair market value is for each property?
I would have to go through all the agreements that were made and find out what the average was. I can't, short answer, no, I can't tell you what the fair market is. It all depends on property size and property value.
Right, but the range. I'm not asking for the average, but the range that we're going to be paying out per property.
I'll look it up.
I believe there's 112 properties involved in this total.
Mr. Chairman.
Approximately that number.
Most of them, Jello, most of them are in the $500, $700 range, especially for temporary. Some have negotiated a little more. If they have trees being removed, we give them the value of the tree as well. Things like that, when we might raise it. But as a general rule, it's usually in $500 to $700 about.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Seeing, give my verbal to get this on the agenda for the next week.
This is Nancy Halder. I give my verbal, Mr. Thayer.
Thank you.
And Jill Creamer will give her verbal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Diane, please put this on the next week.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
All right, finance. I'll start off with, we have the CDBG appropriations due to a procedural hold up. We'll probably just give that second reading. We then also have before us, let me pull this up. Please prepare legislation to amend ordinance 155, 2016 and accept the attached revised credit card policy. This is the policy for the city of Massillon when it comes to the city employees having to use a credit card for the city expenses. It highlights that one of the changes is that the program administrator was Stephanie Myers, but now will be moved over to Ashley McCabe. Are there any questions related to this ordinance? I give my verbal, and Diane will have to contact Megan or Mike tomorrow and get their verbals for it as well. The second piece we have is what we call the wish list. It is please prepare a resolution to approve the attached 2021 Stark County tax budget for the city of Massillon. This is required by the Stark County Budget Commission and is to be approved and filed by August 20th. For those of you who may not be familiar with this, this is simply our wish list. It's what we use as a justification for the taxes that we have to collect in order to operate as a city. We send it into the Budget Commission for the county. We have to have it into them, as it said, by the 20th. This does not necessarily mean it will be our budget come this fall when we go through the budget hearings. It just kind of says these are anticipated expenses, these are anticipated revenue streams, things of that nature. And it just is on the records that when we provide our actual budget to the county, they have this as a kind of a fair warning. Are there any questions or discussions to this? All right. Well, Diane, I'll give my verbal to that as well. It's a very informative document, so please take the time to look through it. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. Outside of that, I do not believe I have anything else except for the municipal court transfer. They want to transfer $1,000 out of their bailiff travel, school, and seminars. They want to transfer $789 out of the bailiff bond and place the total into unemployment compensation, and this is to pay for a former employee. I will go ahead and give my verbal on that as well, Diane. That is all I have for finance, but as Ms. Littman had requested, Ms. Sylvester, are you able to give us an update on the intersection of 23rd and Lincoln Way Northwest?
Yes, sir, I can. As I did update, we did have the meeting to get the funding all put together. That has been accomplished. So we've got the 2 signal heads for the light fixture on order through our traffic and safety department. And we were to receive the final quote then for the pavement markings, and that we were to receive as of today. So I haven't seen that yet come in, but as soon as I have that, we'll be moving forward with that as well. And I can give you those final numbers and let you know they will also be putting a schedule together of when that project can get started. So that will be a part of the proposals as well. So I can give you that final update then once I have everything.
Thank you. I do want to add, I forgot during the finance, we've been talking about small business grants. We've also been speaking to a program that would assist renters and homeowners in the city of Massillon who may be impacted by this current COVID-19 pandemic. I spoke with the auditor this past week. I spoke to the administration this past week. I believe we have agreement that this can be done. And I was looking at it as what would be the step for council. If we're using that $575,000, we've already appropriated it for the use of COVID-related projects and expenses. So all we would have to do is transfer a specific amount into a line item that would be for the purpose of these grants. So it would be my hopes that we would be able to, in the next week or two, be able to sign off on a transfer of funds for this distinct purpose. And this would encumber those funds to be used for that purpose, which meets our minimum guidelines of the program currently. And then they would have to be spent by end of year still. So I do look forward to some more updates coming. But just letting you know, we've kind of mapped out a road to get there. Ms. Littman?
Could we get an update on where we are with the spending of those funds? I know that they've given us an update in the past as far as, I think we were at 111,000 or something. Have we incurred additional expenses?
The auditor's office, Ms. Ferrero or Ms. Bonk, are you able to answer that question?
I can answer for you, Ed. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, so far, the expenses that we have put back into line items of all of the departments that have spent money for COVID is $70,467.52. That does not include any fire, nothing from the fire, no police salary, and no unemployment. None of those have been processed yet.
Did you say 70,000?
Yes, it's on your cash statement. It's under 1217.
Okay, then why did we have a number that said 111 before?
Well, that includes the unemployment numbers and different things like that. We just haven't transferred any of that money yet.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions pertaining to this? Mr. Thayer?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Just recently, President Trump, and I believe even the state agencies, said that some of this COVID money is going to be available to families that are keeping their children home and schooling them at home, whether they call it remote learning or homeschooling. I have a question of, I guess, Ms. Walters, or if she's have been tuned into that, or if anybody else knows. And if so, I know there's probably a few people listening here that would like to find out how they can access that. And just one second thing.
Are you referencing, because I just read something today where they were putting money out for basically for homes of children who are learning remotely to be able to pay for their internet connection. And that's school districts were able to apply for grants to be able to provide that for their students. Is that what you're referencing?
That's part of it. But yeah, the rest of the, not just the technology, but the textbooks and whatever, supplies are needed to do just that at home.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd be curious to find out if, as soon as possible, when that's available and how to access. And several people have contacted me lately, again, about traffic issues. I'm sure everybody's getting them. I just wanted to ask, somebody said, now, correct me if I'm wrong, it's hearsay. We were going to hire someone on the police department specifically for traffic, but we haven't done that. And I understand this is not the year to be asking that question, but has there been more thought to that? Thank you.
I think we kind of spoke a little bit to the school-related issue with that monies. Ms. Sylvester, can you speak to his second question?
His second question in regards to police officers, I'm not sure exactly what question he was asking about somebody specific. We just did hire 2 police officers that just came on board today that were just sworn in today by the mayor.
I believe what he's asking, Mr. Thayer, correct me if I'm wrong, that the rumor he had heard or what he had heard from some residents was that we were hiring an officer specifically for traffic control of some nature.
That's correct. Yeah, that was intimated maybe last year, the year before, that was a plan for the city.
I'm not aware of that. And again, if that is a rumor from citizens, I'm not aware of any facts on that.
Thank you. Ms. Lippman?
Could we get an update on whether we are still planning to attend back in person on the 31st? I think that was a discussion, but then it was my understanding Mr. Lombardi was still going to be looking into the additional technology that may be needed for streaming if we were still only permitted to have 10 people in a gathering.
Yes, you probably were, dealing with your initial startup. Ms. Eisnick spoke to that briefly, but if Eisnick or the party would like to speak to it in more detail, no, it's okay. They certainly can.
I can address that. Right now, the holdup that we're having is I went down and looked. There is a Massillon Council Wi-Fi available down there. However, it doesn't seem like anybody knows the password. I tried to call BPI, left a few messages for them. Nobody ever got back to me. So I spoke with the mayor this morning. She is going to speak with Anita Combs, and she believes Anita can get us that information. And so the mayor's on top of this right now. That's the last hurdle. Once I get the password, I can test the Wi-Fi, make sure the bandwidth is there for us to be able to broadcast and receive. And then at that point, it's just a matter of ordering the equipment and getting it installed, which when I spoke with Bob Jones, I believe he had said he needs at least 2 weeks lag time to order the one piece of equipment that we need. And then we'll have to schedule him to install it. And then the laptops were going to be, I think he said a week. And I'll get those numbers nailed down again and have them for next Monday's meeting, so that I can give you specifics. And then if we get that password in the meantime, I'll run downtown, check it all out. And once I've got the test done on the Wi-Fi, then it's just a matter of ordering the stuff and getting it installed.
So now is it my understanding we will be entering with masks and we will be able to enter together, or do we need to be staggered to come into our facility?
According to Terry Argent, and I can ask her to be on the meeting next week to clarify everything. But according to what she told me, we have to, all social distancing rules apply, 6 feet apart as we're going in and out. We do have to have masks on the entire time that we're in chambers, even though we're separated by dividers. We have to have a mask or a face shield, except when we're speaking. And only 10 people can be in that room at a time. So we still have to have somebody either in the conference room or staying home, and we can alternate, week by week as to who that person is.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lombardi.
Sure.
Mr. Thayer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lewis. I tried to ask Ms. Walters specifically about that. She is the kind of the keeper of the COVID there, if you would. Is she available to chime in on this about the allotments for homeschooling?
This is Samantha. I have no knowledge of any funding for homeschooling or for internet access. It would all come through the state, not the CDBG funding.
And I guess to that point, Mr. Thayer, was what I was trying to express. My day job, where I work at, is considered a school district. And so we receive communications that school districts would be the ones that would receive that funding and would get it out to the students and their families as far as related expenses for schooling in the home. So I would imagine that our next step, if we really wanted to inquire as to what would be done, would be to contact the school board and see what resources they have available and are making available. And if there's still a gap, then maybe the city could step in and see what they can do. But because it is an educational-based service, there is funds that would be funneled to school districts for that distinct purpose. It's it was what I'm seeing from the communications we're receiving.
So we have to go to the school board or the school administration?
Mr. Lewis, this is the mayor.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know, I am working with Strengthening Stark to look at using some of our CARES money to help with the gap for the internet, and we're working on that now.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think there's two things going on. Anything else?
Yes, Ed, this is Diane.
Yes.
I had received a call from Councilwoman Littman in regards to the cards that were published by the administration. Very few of you have come down and physically picked up any cards, so I did email those to you this evening. So that if you wanted to print it out or be able to pass it out to your constituents in your wards, then you'd be able to do so.
Thank you. All right, we have come to the time in the meeting where the public may speak to any issue that concerns them in the city of Massillon. We ask that you please state your name and address for the record. And if you could please keep your comments to under 3 minutes. Seeing none, I guess we will meet for our regular session of council next Monday. Thank you.